and this is VR or Bust. We've got an awesome panelist, or an awesome group of people up here to talk about the latest in VR and some of our latest inventions. And this is sponsored by You Are Here. So, on our panel here, we have Ryan Cherry from PulseWorks. We have Curtis Hartung from Tripwire and Saham Ali from Falcon's Digital Media. I'm also from Falcon's Digital Media. So to kick things off, we're just going to let our panelists introduce themselves and a little bit about what they are working on right now. So I'll start on the far end over there with Orion.
All right, great. My name is Orion Cherry. As I said, I work for PulseWorks, and we are a turnkey operation. We set up entertainment ticketed experiences at various museums and venues around the country. So currently we have a spacewalk VR at the Dayton Air Force Museum, the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum, and most recently we have a VR experience at the Georgia Aquarium. And so we have a 3-axis motion base plus VR using CD1's Oculus, 5.1 sound, and 40 effects combined. So in a nutshell, that's what we do.
Well, hi, Kurt Hartung. I'm a programmer on at Tripwire. We've shipped Killing Floor Incursion. I don't know if any of you have played it. It's out there. We worked on that for over a year, and really did a lot of. We had to relearn and reinvent. I did. When you sent up for the talk, I did a little presentation. It was like a couple of minutes. Do you want me to do that now or later?
Absolutely. This is your time.
You sure?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, I will. I knew it was going to be a very short introductory thing, so I didn't. But I was supposed to introduce myself, so it's me. I started programming very early on TR-80s and Apple II. Anyone else? Amigas? Yay? Yeah, okay, thank you. Right? We used to laugh at PCs and Apples. So I started in mechanical engineering, actually. I didn't know that my hobby would pay me. It turns out that it will. The computer programming part was good. Started with Usenet, got network programming on EQ in 2005, and as soon as Gear VR came out, I bought one and started working on it and wrenching on it, and just had a lot of fun doing stuff. I was going to say that everything I'm going to talk about today is mostly my view, but not like it's just me. Like the team, we're talking about stuff all the time. You do so much as put a bullet in the game, and we have like a 5-minute confab on exactly the way to put it in, because no one really knows the best way to do it. It all comes down to feel, usually. Does this feel right? Does this feel wrong? I just want to say that in case I say something stupid, it's not Tripwire. That's it. This is some VR points I'm probably going to get into when we actually talk about it in a minute. I don't want to go into too much depth here. Motion sickness, very common. We use teleport to deal with that, which is very common. We also did free move, and to our surprise, not really to some of the people on the team like me, surprise, free move was everyone loved it. The ability to actually move around and translate inside the game, which makes a lot of people sick, but turns out more like about, if you're careful about it and what you do with the sides and stuff, about 25% actually get sick from that. Everyone else, it really amplifies the VR experience. They really dig it. So much that they'll review bomb you unless you put it in, even if it makes everyone else sick. The biggest problem we had was dealing with the virtual. You're in room space. You can actually walk around. If there's a rock in your way, you can just walk right through it because it's not really there. What do you do in the game? You know, in a real game, you can say, well, you just can't go there, and you stop the camera. But in VR, you can't do that because the person can. If you need to take a gun out of someone's hand or add recoil to it, they know the gun's not recoiling. There's nothing in their hands. So it feels wrong. And getting the experience of making it feel right and look right to merge and marry on the screen is an ongoing, very fast-moving target. It's hard to get just right. And if you ever move a person and then they didn't instigate it, it makes them sick immediately. If you just suddenly move someone in VR and move the camera, that's terrible. If they pull themselves along, like lone echo, or you move them or expect them to move in the cockpit, fine. But other than that, don't do it. Also, inventory systems. When you actually put stuff on people instead of having like an inventory screen, you have to be careful of that because people want to have so much physical space and it overlaps. Top 3 things I would improve: comfort, and resolution. Originally, this read comfort, and comfort. But I ran it by my coworker, and they really, one of them, Brooks, made an excellent argument for resolution. I think resolution is good enough because your brain just goes away. After you've been playing the game, if you look at the pixels and you look at a poster, and you look at something, you say, "Oh, I can see that this isn't quite right and the resolution isn't really good." But as soon as you start playing, as soon as you get into the experience, that goes away. Your brain just ignores it. But if you're doing something like productivity, where you do need to see the resolution constantly and persistently, then it does start to matter. Like if you're trying to use a word processor in VR, which sounds a little silly, but my point here is, yes, games are getting you the tech, but if you want to keep it, you've got to put it in people's hands comfortably, persistently. We have LCD monitors because they're awesome. We have LED mice, because they're great. Gamers brought them, but they kept them doing the productivity, making them useful to everyone's daily work. Specifically, I can't wear contacts because I can't stick things in my face, which means I have to wear glasses inside a VR helmet. 2-3 hours a day, that's my job. I actually had a special pair of glasses made so that they would fit better. That seems ridiculous because the Gear VR doesn't have that problem. The focal length is close enough that I can focus on it. I think that should be adjusted. Maybe that's just a pet peeve. The other ones are more real. Sweating and fogging. I often get people who say, "This experience is great. We should put a trampoline under you and have you run around while you're doing it." People love it. They get exercise out of it. I say, "You ever see a soaked headset?" Because I have. They're disgusting. Ever have someone come and demo a game and they go, "Ooh, thanks. I should have given you a chamois with that." It's just, it's exactly. And until that, I don't know what the solution is, but that needs to get solved. If you're going to use it in physical activity, fogging up the lenses rarely happens. When it does, you're done. Long-term comfort, something you can do all day. Who wants to wear a box on their face 8 hours a day? Right? That's ridiculous. It's silly. But if I say who wants to look at a monitor 8 hours a day, okay, it needs to be that. It needs to be the level where you don't think it's that ridiculous. Cordless, cordless. It means you need all your batteries and all your rendering tech. If it's not a backpack, it's going to suck. And we're not quite there yet for cordless. Content, all the things that people often tell me, if we just had this, VR would be better. I'm just listing some of those things. And the input controllers, I got that more or less slain. The controllers, I think, feel pretty good. There's certainly room for improvement, but I don't think it's immediate. Okay, sorry to take up too much time.
No, that's fine. Saham, why don't you tell us a little bit about Falcon's digital media?
Sure. No, I don't think that. Okay. My name's Saham. I am the Director of Technology for Falcon's Creative Group, Falcon's Digital Media. It's a multidisciplinary design and media company down in Orlando, Florida. We primarily create experiences for large venues, theme park attractions, and not only, we've been doing the VR in a traditional sense for a very long time. Now that the HMDs are hitting mass market, we're finding alternative ways to give very in-depth experiences to audiences all around the world.
Cool. So currently we are opening this weekend up in Times Square, a collaboration with National Geographic. It's called Ocean Odyssey. It's a massive secret life of sea creatures kind of experience that features all these explorers that have done all kinds of work with the oceans, from geologists and conservationists and whatnot. The neat part about this project up there is no live creatures, no water. It's all done with holograms, projection mapping, and some really cool virtual tech. If you want to talk about that a little bit.
Sure, yeah. So cool thing about Falcons, we're always looking for how do we engage an audience, and so having to put a underwater attraction without animals or water, we had to come up with a way to engage the audience, and one of them being using VR tracking technology, but without VR itself, to basically have like a interactive exhibit where you can look at an aquarium essentially using a flashlight, which is essentially a puck from the Vive. And so that methodology also, as Jesse mentioned, using AR, VR without a headset, using holographics, Pepper's Ghost effect on multiple areas, and projection mapping, which is again very powerful still. So yeah, very exciting stuff.
So the thing we're going to show you today is the first time we're showing this here in North America, is kind of our idea of mass virtual reality. And of course, when you go to a theme park, one of the hardest things about getting people into that massive experience is getting everybody in the gear, right? Getting everybody like wired up, and does it fit right, and this one's not working, and all that kind of stuff. So our company has come up with this thing called the Circumotion, which is a haptic 360-degree dome experience in 3D that loads 130 people in at a shot.
So Circumotion is an amazing attraction. It's first of its kind. It incorporates 4 degrees of freedom motion base with a 360-degree dome 3D media piece. Combining these two elements together, it creates something that's incredibly immersive and something that's never been done before.
So the Circumotion hardware was really the brainchild of Cecil Nypuri at Falcon's Treehouse to develop a product that would represent floating in a capsule or in a bubble of some kind, but also wrap that around with a 360 3D media experience that would really truly make you feel like you're inside of a space. Our goal with the attraction was to up the immersion level and make people feel even more a participant in these journeys, in these worlds.
Circumotion is a unique product. It's a patented product of ours. But what's really unique about it is it's a theater in the round, if you will. It houses 134 guests that are in rings, that's raked seating, and you're now contained in a dome where the projection technology is seamless to you.
The Circumotion is very fast, very calibrated to the media screen. Anything that happens on the media screen happens to us. If Hulk goes in and pulls the whole ride vehicle up, you feel as if you are being pulled up as well. If a robot comes around and spins the vehicle, you spin as well, and it's perfectly matched, perfectly calibrated with the 360 dome that is around the Circumotion.
A lot of pre-planning went into the choreography and the animation and storytelling to make sure that guests sitting on opposite sides of the platform would have similar experiences. For example, one of the ways we did that was we used heads-up displays. So we almost did virtual mega screens or virtual jumbotrons in the media content to show guests what was happening on the other side of the room.
The Hulk Circumotion was an extraordinary project because it was something we had never really done before. It was a brand new adventure, and the thing that made it very, very complex was not only do we have full surround sound, it became a 24.4 channel surround sound. And the complex part was not only do we have it all around us, but we have it vertically in 4 layers as well.
What's really cool about Hulk Circumotion is no matter what seat you sit in, you get a totally different experience. So it's a lot of fun to ride and ride again and again and again.
So of course, where we're going next with this is that we want to turn this ride. Actually, you can go right now. It's in Dubai at a massive indoor theme park called IMG Worlds of Adventure. For us, we would like to take this a step further, make it one of the largest mixed reality type environments, or this type of technology, a mixed reality environment using augmented reality glasses and a 3D projected virtual space, and I'll have Saham talk about that for a minute.
Sure. So as Jesse mentioned, Rev 1 is pretty cool. Looking how do we engage the audience and go a little bit deeper. The 3D is cool, it's great, except now we can do what has always been pre-baked content, rendered content, and mixing it with real-time content. So every guest experience is that much more individual. Biggest issue with VR for us has always been whenever you employ it in a large-scale venue and you have a lot of people. One, obviously sweaty headsets. That's difficult to deal with. But secondly, you're in it alone. You don't really get to see your buddy next to you. You just went to a theme park. You want to do it together. So using the Circumotion platform and having a 360 dome experience, and then adding the interactive element of additional mixed reality content, we feel is going to be the next level of interactive media theme parks. It'll be fun when we get there.
All right, so now we're going to step into our panel discussion here a little bit. So our topics here, across the board, anybody can start this. What do you feel is VR's greatest challenge as a medium, and how is your team addressing it?
Well, I guess Tripwire touched on it a little bit there, right? With cumbersome it can be, and how you can get long term it can be an issue, right? Sweating, fogging, etc. The expense is an obvious issue for consumers. Space is an issue for consumers. High-end PCs to run this thing is an issue for consumers. Motion obviously is an issue too, because as purely content guys, they can't actually move you to match it, right? Which is what we're able to do and what you guys are able to do. Because the inner ear, when it's not picking up that motion that your eyes are telling you is happening, that are convincing the rest of your brain is happening, that disparity causes that motion sickness, that ailments, that nausea. So I think those are some of the big issues, but thankfully it's kind of a perfect fit for us in terms of handling those issues. And of course, cleaning, wipes, you want to swap out the pads around the headsets for something that's cleanable, and you can use an antiseptic wipe on and clean that up for the next people to come along, because no one wants that on their face. But yeah, generally speaking, those are the big ones, right? Motion sickness is probably the top of the list still.
Yeah, motion sickness. It's difficult to work on a product is going to make 20% of people try it sick.
Right.
Yeah, that percentage has never been higher on anything I've ever worked on. 15% tops. No. That's definitely one of the big things. I think the cumbersome nature of the headset. I have one at home for development, and sometimes I'll think, man, it'd be cool to fire up a game, but I got to put the whole headset on. I got to kind of move the chair and get my sensor set. Nah, I'm just gonna put something else. And that, I think, needs to be overcome. It needs to be less cumbersome to put on and off, to fit right, and to kind of adjust it and everything. Maybe that's just something I have in my glasses. I know it is, but I think I hear the same story from other people, that it's kind of a pain. Right now, the content is kind of at where computers were when they first got color. They're for games. So everyone makes a game. Everyone makes an experience. Everyone makes a movie. And as I said in my presentation, it's the productivity, it's the actual usage of the things to do work that are going to get it to stay. And we're not there yet for all the reasons we've already talked about. No one wants to use a word processor and a keyboard for 8-10 hours a day. Even the breaks. It's not there. It's not even close. But it's something everyone knows we need, kind of even subconsciously. Everyone's working towards that. Yeah, we want everyone to use these things all the time. And one other thing that they touched on, and I completely agree, is the separation from you and the other people around you. As soon as I put that on, I'm me and me alone. I can't easily take it off and interact with my coworkers. I can't easily stand up and do something. I can't share the experience. Sharing the experience, as anyone who bought an early headset would know, is giving it to someone so they can see it too. And then when you have a group of 3 or 4 people, you've got to wait, and everyone's waiting to be the next person. And it's cool, but it's not fun. You can't share the experience. Again, I don't know the solution that is. Maybe some mixed reality, is the right vector for them.
Yeah, we're really excited about the tech in general. And as he said, the biggest issue for us has always been form factor and how it's a little clunky. It's going to get better, but right now it is pretty clunky. And in our situation, when we have to deal with getting about 1,000 people an hour through a ride, how do you deal with hygiene? You can't swap out pads. So we have our own proprietary method where you have custom headsets that basically allow it so that you don't have to bring it with you or get fitted. It's kind of like snap fit. You go sit down the ride, you're ready to go, you're done with the ride, you take off your set and just throw it in the wash. And then that fixes that problem, because you just have a dishwasher running all day taking care of your stuff. On the other aspect, though, as far as VR and AR, as we said, we believe that AR really is AR/MR. It's kind of like the holy grail of where this all really needs to go, because it is so isolated. You're isolated in VR. You can't really interact. And they've done things here and there with getting avatars. Anyone did alt space VR, any of that stuff. You can get into a space, but it's not. Still don't have that tactile, visceral. There's nobody there. But when you go to MR and you can see right into your normal world with additional metadata on top of it, well, that gets a little bit cooler.
That's exciting. I can't wait for that.
Yeah, and the motion sickness aspect, definitely, unfortunately, the reality is 20%, if not worse, really.
No, I've been kind of conservative.
Yeah, so we get lucky because we really get to control our environment with a platform like Circumotion, where we do have to play with the human inner ear and make sure they don't get sick. If one rotation's off by a couple frames, you're going to get sick. But we've sat there and programmed these rides so that it's 100% locked with that content. You're really not getting sick. In fact, as far as I remember, like that number for us over there, it's been far less, just because you're moving. You're not trying to trick your inner ear. You're actually doing it, so the media matches up a lot better.
Yeah, for us, we found that really the only people that get ill on our content are people that get ill with 3D in general, that just don't like 3D. So VR is a perfect 3D, right? So there's some crossover.
We have, it's amazing how good the brain is at figuring out something wrong. Just 2 weeks ago, one of our testers came in and said, man, I've been testing like usual. I don't get sick normally, but this is making me woozy. Like, we didn't change anything. So it turned out we were 1 frame off. We had moved the motion detection and the rendering had swapped pipelines, so it was rendering before it was detecting. And it was off. And it was making not just him sick. I did a quick version of The Office. In the last 2 days, people get woozy. Like, yeah, for some reason it doesn't make me sick lately. Really?
On the other side of that, it's funny what you can actually get away with and how much you can fool the brain as well. So say that we have a pitch of only 30 degrees. But in the VR, we pitch you 90.
You feel like
we travel slower, but yeah, as long as you're moving in that direction, you're good. So.
Yeah, you can lie. But there's an experience in Utah, I believe, like something or other, something off the top of my head. But they have this infinite corridor game where everyone's fighting monsters on this corridor, and you just keep walking straight. And in your back of your mind, you know the warehouse is not this big. And when you take off your headset, you realize you've been going in a circle.
Redirected walking.
The whole time. You've been walking in a big circle. And it felt to you like you were going straight the whole time because
they kept edging you. Yeah, it's called redirected walking. There are colleges that have been doing research on this VR stuff for a long time, room scale stuff. That's really interesting. That's one of them. And another one is how they'll actually move walls to redistribute space in a VR world, so that you're going down a hallway, and then you go into the room, and suddenly, or you're going through the room, you go through the door, and then this space is suddenly bigger because the wall behind you shifted up. So, shift around. So we're using the real space, but we're doing it in such a way to make to give you the sense that it's bigger than it really is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So one of the things, of course, Hollywood would love to make a virtual experience of the killer movie with live action, but it's proven to be very difficult to tell stories in VR with live action, and a lot of it is just how do you set up the shots, how do you make
people pay attention to the right thing at the right time?
Absolutely. How do you orchestrate this so people are always looking at the right thing at the right time? Do you guys think that will ever happen versus what we're able to do and orchestrating it in real time? Like game engines and whatnot.
For us, we stay in motion the whole time. So generally, people will look in the direction that they're moving, and we rely on that, and that's worked great for us so far.
Yeah, I'm an optimist. So I'd say yes, but I read a couple of good articles on this, and I actually we have a couple of parts in the story that act like cutscenes, but in VR they're not. They're just orchestrated events, and we find that sound cues that get you a long way there. You're going to look towards where the sound is. And motion, if there's nothing going on, what we'll do is we'll not freeze, but we'll stop animating things where you're not supposed to look. And we'll heavily animate things where you are. And we get a lot of focus testers in, usually 1 or 2 a week at least. And when we're just for releasing, like 3 or 4 a day. And pretty universally, everyone just looks exactly where we want. So I think it's if you don't consciously try to fool the system, like, I know you want me to look over there, I'm going to look over there, which is what I do. But as long as you're actually playing along, that it's I think a fairly solvable problem.
Yeah, I have my viewpoint would be it's definitely depends on the application, especially with VR. You have the ability of doing baked content, and you can do real-time content. It's really dependent on which way you're going, or how you're going. What is the application, and then how are you going to get somebody's attention? Well, if it's linear baked content, then it's all in the production process of how do we get people to look in the right place. An example of circuit motion, that was really hard, but it was only 4 or 5 minutes, and we had a long production process which had to choreograph the movement of our motion base so that the audience was always looking at the animation, and then we had to make sure the animation, timing-wise, everything lined up to meet with the mechanical constraints of the actual ride, because I think it was 11 RPM is how fast this thing can rotate. So how fast are we allowing Iron Man to swing around the 360 dome? So a lot of that. But then when you're in real time, I think things with haptic and also eye tracking, once we see eye tracking involved, then we'll be able to gauge a little bit more, where our people are looking, and then in real time change the story or trigger events or orchestrate cutscenes, etc., just by seeing where the people are looking, and then be able to trigger our missions.
Awesome. So one of the things that has started to pop up in VR is the idea of multiplayer co-op online experiences. So you're all virtually in there, and you're all virtually represented by some type of avatar or another. Have you found any specific advantages of this versus the traditional, common flat screen experience in games? Are there anything that you've discovered that's like, wow, this is really unique to VR, or something that perhaps we can do that hasn't been done in that territory?
What I would say, we just, Killing for Incursion is an interactive game, and we were surprised how many people really felt that was the way the game should have been played. Because we designed it as sort of a single-player experience to be compelling, and then we added another person and made sure there's stuff would go through to do. And everyone thinks that's what the game is all about. And what I found is it's a cooperative game. People cooperate a lot more when there's someone who they think is another person in VR. Because we also do Killing Floor 2, which is a cooperative game. People don't really cooperate, teams do, but everyone's sort of not really there. They're all cardboard cutouts. But in VR, people will I'll see them interact with each other. They are technically standing next to each other. They don't need to be. They're in different rooms. I've seen this too, where they're talking about, okay, you take the axe, and I'm going to take your gun, and you go over this, and they're talking and interacting in a very, now you do this, and we'll do this, and you have a plan, and let's go, and let's execute, using gestures that they couldn't easily do in a regular game. And cooperating at a level I've never seen in other cooperative games. So I think it really brings, when you anthropomorphize that collection of pixels, it's much more than the sum of the parts, which is my experience. Multiplayer is just better.
Right. All those years of evolution, we notice gestures, we notice movements and motions. You could see somebody rushing by in a cart and just see for a few frames a bit of motion and immediately get a sense of whether that's some baked animation or something else, which means, is that the guy next to me? Is that the guy in VR with me? Yeah, it happens really fast. So that quick apprehension is fantastic. Also on the sense of scale, distance, and depth, that's immediate as well in VR, which is great for kind of an inherent learning where you don't have to teach as much in certain ways. I'm sorry. No.
It was very surprisingly disconcerting the first couple of times this happened. Because I'm the other programmer on the team, the product programmer, I was working with at the time. He's sitting on the desk next to me, and we're constantly testing things, interactive, constantly testing the multiplayer stuff. And we'll do something, and he'll say, okay, all right, I see what's wrong here, I'm going to go and fix it. And he'll take his head off. And in the game, his head takes off like, dude! And it just leaves his torso. And my brain said, that guy just got decapitated. And it was really, for a few moments, I had to catch myself, and it was really disconcerting. I'm still not used to it.
Yeah. It's a feature, not a bug. It's the season for it, right?
Sure. So let's talk a little bit about the potential of out-of-home experiences. One of the things that you had mentioned is, man, it's really expensive to buy all this stuff. And there's a lot of people out there that man, I'd love to own a VR system. I'd love to experience a really top-tier VR system. Right. So we're starting to see a little bit of a resurgence of the arcade world as some of the VR stuff is starting to show up in smaller venues and stuff like that. What other things could you do with that? What other ways could you make it easier for a family or something to go experience VR or AR in an environment?
Sure, I would love to see the resurgence of the arcades. I would love for that to happen. I don't know if it will. I mean, I'm definitely pushing for it in my own way, and there are people here in Georgia that we could work with and make some magic happen for sure if we got the right site, the right location, right next to a college where people are awake 24/7. That would be great. There's a lot of potential there, but business concerns are a real issue potentially, and pulling that all off, that's a big expense up front. But that would be a way to open the gates to more people and have it more accessible. And more importantly, I think I want more people's first time with VR to be a quality experience. I see more and more of these really, really cheap sort of mobile app things, these VR headsets, at GameSpot or Walmart or something that you can buy for 20 or 30 bucks, and then they end up downloading some content that maybe not so great. That's their first impression, and then they just don't come back to it, right? So
yeah, that's about what I expected.
Yeah.
And I want people to put the headset on and go, oh my God,
Right.
what?
Good first
you can
impression.
do this?
Yeah.
I love doing that.
Right.
Whenever someone comes in, like, have you ever used it before? No, it's the first time. Awesome, everyone's going to be doing another new one.
Yeah.
There's definitely the arcade. I'd love to see it come back. It's several people out there, I won't say specifically, have gone into this market venture where they want to have a themed attraction. You go, but you get to experience these VR. The unfortunate thing is the experiences aren't that great. They put a lot of money, a lot of effort into making it, except they're going after, you have to remember, 99% of the world has not experienced VR. So it's getting it to the masses, have them then experience it. Unfortunately, they don't get that good experience the first time, and then you could be turned off for it. So I think that's kind of dangerous, right? We want to make sure whatever these arcades that do pop up have good content. One that makes it a compelling argument. Okay, yeah, I want to see more of this, rather than, okay, that was kind of lame.
Or I want one of these at home.
Yeah, that's why I'm assuming the large investment, because we need the tetherless, we need the room scale, we need a combination of motion platforms, we need all of that. Yeah. And if we could build something where everyone's collaborating or fighting each other, that could be huge. That you could step in, see that, or even on the outside before you buy a ticket, you have massive monitors like the old Mech Warrior days where they had those pods and linked up.
I played that at Dave & Buster's.
Yeah, exactly. But they had the monitors where you could see the world, you could see the combatants in the arena fighting it out, and that is an appealing thing before you even get into VR.
I think we need to
further that reaches, the better. Bring people in.
I think we need to reach a level of casualness we don't have yet. You can pull out your phone and play some Candy Crush. But you don't pull out your phone and play a VR game.
Yeah.
And I'm not think we're close, or we should be trying to do that right now, but I think that's kind of the level you need to be at to really address that and make it accessible. And every year we get a little closer. Phones get a little faster.
Cool. Yeah, actually, I was at a virtual reality conference just a couple weeks ago, Future of Immersive Leisure in Las Vegas, and one of the really unusual panels that came up was saying that museums have a major calling for AR, VR experiences. Number one, because it makes learning something very, very cool, and they can afford to set up something like that, and people can go in and have a great, 5-minute experience or something like that. And there is a pretty serious lack of content out there right now, and so that is, and a lot of people go to museums every year. I mean, so. That's certainly something for the indie developers out there to kind of consider. I mean, you're not going to have to build a 9-hour game or something like that. A 5-minute, really awesome VR experience that has some kind of educational value as well. So let's hear what else we got here. So I guess you guys are all kind of into this a little bit. What advice do you have to the people out there right now that are like, man, I'd kind of like to jump on this bandwagon? How the heck do I get started in AR, VR development?
Try a little bit of everything. There's a lot of different applications for the tech. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to do media like we're doing up here. We're either rendering things in real time, which require a bunch of people to make 3D models, textures, assets, animations, or we could be rendering, the same stuff, but offline rendering where it's baked content. Still requires a lot of effort. But there's productions going on for sports broadcast, even for education, sending cameras down to the bottom of the ocean so you can be somewhere. All these are different ways they're employing the VR technology. It's the application of how you want to use it, whether it's education, production. I would love one day to be sitting at my desk and have a 3D model floating that I've just finished, cranking out in Maya. It's on my desk, and then, be able to look at it with Jesse and be like, let's look at it in real space. Oh yeah, it doesn't look right. Let's modify it and actually be able to haptically adjust it without having to go back to my keyboard and mouse. I feel like that's
actually he's on the other side of the country.
Exactly. He doesn't even have to be here anymore. And that productivity, that's really for business is the holy grail. It's how do you employ this tech to bring people together? I know when everyone started flying and teleconferencing was supposed to eliminate people flying everywhere. People still do it, but it got to a point where it was only good enough to look at somebody on a screen, And now they're coming out with 360 cameras where you stick it in the middle of your conference room and it's looking at everybody. And next thing will hopefully be, what if it's a holographic? Where I don't even have to be in the same room, but Jesse's actually walking around next to me and he's in another country. Right? And we can look at the same virtual model of this theme park that we're building. We don't even have to be together anymore. Look at it. We can share that experience.
Yeah, I don't think anyone here thinks this. If you do, don't. And that is that everything's been done already in VR. I mean, it's so new. My advice would be come up with something, just start experimenting and looking for a direction to go. We haven't even scratched the surface. I hate to use that kind of a cliche, but so we're going to get controllers in our hands. Well, let's shoot guns. So everyone's got things that have guns. Well, we can see 360 and put you in the middle of the action. So we make some great content to put you in the middle of the action. And all the obvious things have been tried and done, but only the obvious things. And you might be the one who comes up with something and everyone goes, "Oh, how did we not think of that? What? I can't believe it." It was so obvious in hindsight. They call it the black swan, and it's really just start experimenting, start trying, and remember the VR is all about feel. It's all about feel over. You can't just say this is technically right and therefore it's right. No, it has to feel right, and sometimes that's sort of a nebulous goal. You just have to keep trying and failing, trying and failing to get something right. So don't be discouraged if your idea doesn't work right away. None of them did, not even close. Just got to be persistent.
Sure, and don't be constrained by what everyone else is telling you to do. Like, oh, don't do this. VR is not. You're just going to get sick. Don't do that. Like, before we even tried it with a motion base, that's what most people were saying way back. DK1 before that, and I was like, no, it doesn't seem right. Let's try it. Let's put on a demo. Let's go out there. Let's put it on the machine. Put it on an old machine that we were using to send to medical conferences and stuff, and just to try it out. And yeah, it did what you'd expect, right? You're matching the motion as long as the motions match with the content exactly. It's a pretty compelling experience. And then go from there. And I would agree with what these guys said about experimentation and iteration. Absolutely. But if you're a small team and you want to go somewhere, I would say quickly try to find your strength, what you stand out on, and focus on it, and then push. That's all I would add.
All right, so we got a little bit of time left here, and let's have a discussion. Right back
I just want to add one more thing first, is that I've been developing for a long time, as these guys have, and VR has been the most collaborative effort I've ever seen between companies that have no business interests in common other than seeing VR work. I've worked directly with Oculus and Vive and Google, I mean, you name it, directly, and they all have the same attitude. Tell us what works for you, and we'll tell you anything you need. And if it comes something great idea, go ahead and share it with everyone, because we want it to all work. Rising tide lifts all boats. So that's there's a lot of friends in this industry.
To piggyback off that, anybody who's been following the mixed reality push from Microsoft, like 5 different headset manufacturers are all releasing the product all at once because they're all sharing the information, and Microsoft is kind of being like the head of this consortium. So now you'll have different price points of different headsets, but it's getting it out there because they listen. They're trying to see what people need.
I've never seen anything like that before.
Yeah. So right back here.
Great panel, guys. Are you seeing any other, I know Milk has been a pretty good auteur in this space. Are there any other auteurs, creators that are kind of surfacing besides somebody like Milk? Where are you seeing those type of artists appear, or is there a place yet, or are we just too early?
What is Milk?
Milk's a VR filmmaker out of New York. He's like one of the best VR filmmakers. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You don't know him? Okay. Whoops. Okay, I'll rephrase the question. Are you seeing any people who are actually making or touring VR content that are kind of leading the creative in this field? And are there anybody that you can point to who's like, okay, that guy over there is doing something really cool? Even that
James
single
Cameron?
company. I mean, you guys have spent a lot of time talking about tech, but I'm just story-wise,
I've heard anecdotally that a lot of Hollywood, a lot of directors, producers are very excited about this tech, but they're all holding their breath. No one knows the best way to do it yet. The guys with the money, I said James Cameron, I wasn't kidding. They're like, man, how can we really make this work and have a show and give an experience that's never been done before? I don't think they have that solved yet to their satisfaction.
Yeah, Spielberg has a group. These guys basically just lend their name to a group of guys so they can get financing, and then they ramp up and do some big thing or have some big pitch. And so there are people out there pushing for it for sure. Yeah, that's mainly what's going on.
I don't know anybody as far as individual content creators, but I know studios like visual effects firms have been, whether they're wanting to bring their own IP because, hey, why not? Or you're taking somebody else's idea. But again, it's the challenge of, it's all about story, right? It's got to start with a good story. And then you have to adapt the story to be able to be told in a 360 stereoscopic medium. Well, not everything in traditional storytelling works. So what do? Like you said, everyone has, it's subjective. I mean, there's some definitely, you should do this, you shouldn't do this, but it's subjective. So who's to say? However, we've got, people have always tried different new things. Peter Jackson did the high frame rate Hobbit, right? Who went to go watch that? It was technically an amazing feat, but if you watched it, it was kind of flat. It was almost too hyper real. Just a couple of weeks back, they invited us out to a Christie, like a projection show, and showing off this new tech where we got to watch one of only 5 theaters in the entire world, 120 frames per eye, HDR, 4K, 3D stereoscopic movie of Ang Lee's, this military movie he did, but it was all shot natively 4K, 120 HDR, insane amounts of like data, and only 5 places in the world can even show it.
Okay. I haven't seen it. Now I want to.
It was interesting. Yeah, it was really interesting. I have this one right here.
Hey, I'm Corey. I work for Motion Reality. I actually have the unfortunate fate of working on both the rendering pipeline and VR tracking technology at the same time. Right. So I had a question regarding motion sickness. Do you guys think as tracking quality improves through like sensor fusion and sensor improvements, and as rendering quality improves through like foveated rendering and just other improvements, and we reduce photon-to-photon latency, do you think that number of the population that gets motion sick is going to naturally go down? Or do you think that there's always going to be like a certain part of the population that needs a like inner ear stimulus or whatever to get it?
I think we're at diminishing returns on that. That's what I feel like. That it's really good now, it's good enough, and if it got a little better, maybe a few would be better, but we're going to have to get there other ways, like reducing peripheral motion, like making sure things match, like giving you solid visual anchors when we move you. I mean, all the things everyone already knows. That's my opinion, is it probably won't get a lot better in terms of making fewer people sick. That it's really asymptotic approach is good as it's going to get.
Yeah, I agree, but I would also add that as generations move on and VR is already out there and you grow up with it, I think that will actually improve.
And we're going to meet it halfway.
Yeah, exactly.
We have kids growing up that have only known digital, right? And so they don't know what it's like to pick up a rotary phone and dial out, right?
Yeah. And why do you dial a phone?
Yeah. So
imagine the first car.
Evolutionary, who knows, maybe next generation, motion sickness will not be a thing because they're just so used to it. We don't know. We also, I don't think, I haven't at least, know of anybody that's doing studies to see what are the long-term effects of human bodies in virtual reality space for extended periods of time. Is there going to be a generational thing that's actually going to take place? We don't know. But as tech does improve, might be diminishing returns. I think a big thing could be eye tracking, which would give us the ability to, in our rendering pipeline, render like
only render what you're looking at.
Exactly, right? And that will make differences in how much GPU or whatever compute we actually need to be rendering, where you don't have to worry about rendering everything, right? So things are going to change in the next couple iterations of these HMDs, which could make it better, but it's going to be a little bit more work and creatively playing with what you're being given. So.
Cool, right there in the back.
Hi, great panel, by the way. Really interested, especially talking about the motion sickness issues. So my question, though, is a little bit different. So you guys talked about how not everything has been done in VR yet. It's very new. It's the new frontier. And so I kind of relate it to the difference between plays and film. Like once they got to that medium, they realized they had to change exactly what they were doing. So from video games to VR, so far you guys have been talking about VR experiences. what exactly takes something from a VR experience to a VR game, in your opinion?
Well, they've been talking about experiences. I've been talking about games.
Yeah. My bad. Two of you have been talking about experiences.
Well, I would say the interaction, because now you have to react to what the person's doing, and that's fundamentally it, right? You can't show. You're not showing a show, which is great and compelling. You have to react to what they're doing. AIs have to follow you around. The story has to follow you, and when you shoot something, it has to react. To take a ridiculous easy. So that requires lots of extra work on the computer side, because now you've got to render everything that you might not have thought of. So your models have to be simpler, your shaders have to be simpler. You have to test way more and find all those corner cases that people are going to do that you can just make them not do when you pre-bake the experience.
There's a halfway point there as well. So everything we do is in real time. So say you're on a track, you're on a predetermined path, but we can also give you interactivity. We can have you shooting at things you fly through and somewhat control the the frame rate that way as well. So try to have the best of both worlds. But yeah, absolutely. And the more freedom, the more work. Right?
It becomes geometrically more complex, the more freedom you do.
Yeah, when we do any of our experiences, traditionally it's a linear story. As we start exploring the more integrated MR type of experiences, we're going to have to do a little bit more work, because now we have to do the interactive content on top of the already conceived baked content. I almost want to say it's essentially a game, except you're just not making points. You're still getting to the end of the story, right? But it's real time. So
interactive experience.
Yeah.
A great panel.
We must be
what
rocking it. Everyone starts up with a great panel.
What would you recommend for somebody that wants to get started experimenting with it? Which development environment? You mentioned the Microsoft stuff. Is that a good path to take? Because there's OpenVR, there's all these different development environments, and you got to pick one and kind of go with it for a while.
All right, if you're going to put me up against the wall, I'd say Unity. I'm sorry. Yes, I would say Unity. Sorry, they both begin with U. I use Unreal. Unreal is also a great choice. Unreal 4 and Unity. Pick one of those, whatever you're more comfortable with. That would be my answer.
Yeah, I would say it depends on your team. Off the shelf, Unreal just has more packed in. You don't have to get plugins and depend on updates from third parties, et cetera, and try to match everything up. If you've got mostly an artist-driven team, I would say Unreal because of Blueprint, personally. And honestly, forward rendering doesn't get you the frames in every single instance with every single type of content.
It's not a magic bullet all the time.
Right.
And as a follow-up, I was at FutureX a couple of days ago, and MSI was there showing their new VR-based workstation and also their backpack, which weighed less and was smaller than my backpack, with using a Vive. And so, while you guys are talking about the hardware, I kind of see it as it's naturally progressing, that the off-the-shelf hardware, it's like, okay, now you have to spend you have to spend extra money to get a VR-based system. But do you see that as becoming a fairly standard platform as things move on, and as, NVIDIA and AMD keep moving graphics engines up?
Oh, absolutely.
Sure. Cost will decrease as power increases.
To hit on your point, these guys had mentioned Unity and Unreal, but you also have to determine what is the end experience. Is it going to be a mobile? Did you want it on Gear VR? When it first came out, we weren't able to do positional tracking. Now Google is offering positional tracking as a service in the AR toolkits that have now come out for both Apple and Android. So, but everything's rendered on the phone, so you have to make your graphics work for that mobile environment. But then if you're looking at, I want to use the Vive and I want interaction, well, then you can push the graphics to a crazy new level, because you've got a PC that you can deck out with all types of graphics capabilities, but then every person has to have this type of machine that they're going to experience at home. So how much of who are you trying to hit? Everybody has a phone, that's a different market, but if you're trying to hit the person that has a really, $5,000 PC at home to have this experience, you're going to be a lot smaller. And
5 people can watch the game.
So your answer is, it depends.
The good news.
I know there's AR stuff mobile. That's fairly standard on it, but the PC is almost
I would say the good news is you can't waste your effort. I've never seen, as I said before, the level of collaboration that there is in the open source. APIs and SDKs are all conscious of each other. They're all friendly to each other. It's not the Coke, Pepsi, PC, Apple, where everyone's trying to get you to use their proprietary interface. It's the complete opposite of that, and it's knocking over with a feather, but it's the case.
Hi, seriously, great panel. One thing we haven't talked about is funding. So as the lead of an indie team that has a demo in Unity and looking to get funding to make it a real experience, what could you all comment about the funding scene? Because it seems like it's high cost, long production time, and low user base, which really doesn't sound attractive to investors typically.
It's not great, because the thing is, everyone knows that VR is new and it's not making crazy money. I mean, you're lucky to get your money back, and that makes anything you do very high risk. But I don't want to discourage you, because I've been you, and if you've got a compelling experience and you can find someone to believe it and to say, hey, fund it, you could. But I don't have any specific advice. It's a high risk, very high risk right now.
I actually would say, probably one of the best case examples, anybody in here play the Apollo 11 experience? That is phenomenal. And it was actually a Kickstarter. It was like, hey, we would like to recreate this, and kind of the anniversary of Apollo 11, and really great story. Actually used a lot of NASA assets that were public domain and everything. It was like, 3 people out of Ireland made that or something like that. But again, kind of like referring back to like the museum thing, where there are people looking for those types of experiences or that type of content. Find your market. Sometimes, dig a little and say, who am I making this for, and can I make it for a group, and can I get interest for that group beforehand to help me fund it? Or maybe I just build a small snippet of what I'm going to put together and put that up, and then people buy into it as like, no, that was really a cool idea, and I'm gonna, I will back you on that, even if it's a bunch of independents backing you.
There's been $100 million AAA titles that have tanked. If you have a good idea and you can make it happen, it doesn't matter. You could probably pull it off for less than 10,000, who knows? But it's just got to be a good idea.
Once again, great panel. So my biggest thing is user input. I know you said, like the wands, controllers are kind of like good enough for now. Do you see in the future, maybe 5-10 years, going towards, like a haptic feedback and force response, anything like that, or maybe, frictionless platforms for movement, anything like that, coming out of what we currently have for tech? Do you see any of that coming to become like the new thing, the new mouse and keyboard?
Yeah, I really like Leap Motion. I'd like to see it improve even more. Leap Motion is basically a small depth camera you can stick on the front of your HMD, and it'll pick up your fingers. And so you can have rendered hands with individual finger movement in VR, and that's fantastic. Yeah. So once their accuracy improves, and then that gets stepped up a few marks, so that'd be awesome. Yeah. But as far as haptics,
that's the thing where everyone knows what we want and no one really knows how to get there. And there's been some blank checks written to figure out how to do that. And like I said, that's why we're okay. We've got some good things. I think Oculus is my favorite. But they would go to any lengths to make the perfect controller, and that's what they came up with. So maybe the better idea is sitting in this room, but we don't. I don't see anything new coming that would be the killer thing. The free-hand thing's great. The knuckle controllers were pretty cool, but they're all kind of doing the same. They're trying to say, we know what we want, and we know we can't get there because we can't push it back on your hand with a holodeck thing. So short of that, this is what we've got.
Yeah, it's a little scary.
I'll check it out now.
Yeah, that's tension feedback, right? So when you grip something, depending on how the tension, like if it's a softball or a hard brick, it will respond to hold your fingers out.
My background being from visual effects and television and film, mocap has been something that has been around for a long time. And different ways to do it, right? There's been active, passive. We used to have gloves, I'm talking 2000s, there were gloves fiber optics that ran through the fingers, and as you bent your finger, the wavelength would change the color of the light going back in, and you know what you're bending your fingers with. Anybody remember Beowulf back in the day?
Yeah.
You know, they for that, I mean, it was amazingly real, but if they had Uncanny Valley, it was just a problem everybody's trying to get over. But the eyes, the way to get around having to hand animate eyes, they used EEGs and EKGs to get muscle data from our eyes and just basically mocap eye information. So for VR, I think the eye tracking is definitely going to be one, but it goes back to I like my controllers, I like using them, but Minority Report thinking, I'm not going to like doing this forever. My arms are going to get tired.
It's the same thing as the headset. We want glasses or something we can see through. At least.
On and off.
I mean, the real paradigm shift is going to be a little node that you stick in your head, all a Black Mirror.
Exactly.
We've got like 2 minutes left.
Hey, thanks again for the great panel. We're happy to sponsor it. I'm John with CR here. A question mainly for the Falcons guys, although we'd love to hear all the input of the panel. Congratulations on the circumotion thing. We believe definitely in getting beyond kind of the long lines and the sweaty headsets. Although if you're going to get beyond the kind of World's Fair scale of this thing where it's a destination, there's only a few in the world, the prices are going to have to come down to the point where somebody, a mall, a movie theater is going to be able to deploy one of these things. And there's so many uses for it, right? You could shoot a car commercial in there. You could have some interactive entertainment in there. We did something like that with LED panels last fall, and it was 22 feet wide and 10 feet high, but it cost, even renting the gear for a month cost $400,000. So for those of us here trying to create these immersive experiences beyond the headset, something a group can enjoy, do you have any suggestions on where to watch? Is it LED, is it projection, is it light field? Like, who's going to get there first, and where do you think these things are going to pop up?
Sure, so I recently there's been a number of YouTube videos popping up where people are kind of going in and they're taking the VR experience and they're basically, instead of feeding it to a headset, they're feeding it through a projector, you know? And they'll use like the HTC Vive tracker to locate physical objects in the space. So essentially what you're talking about is making an immersion room. So it'd be like a ballroom like this that you could literally line up with projectors that would know the depth data. And there's certainly some of that technology coming out. A lot of the guys who kind of pioneered the projection mapping thing would use like Kinects and projectors and kind of feedback through several programs. But you know, the Christie projector already has a solution for that. And Lightform, I believe, is the company. The guy who did the viral video, The Box, about the guy moving the robots around and creating the illusion of depth. So that's certainly on its way, and we're starting to see people experimenting with like Unity and doing things like that, and it's super exciting stuff. And also just the price of projectors. It doesn't need to be that scale, right? Like you can, as for experiments, you can do this in smaller spaces and just create cool experiences, or even things that are like tabletop kind of augmented reality. It's the perception of illusion, right? Like if you look at it from this angle, wow, that totally looks 3D or whatever.
Now I want to play Star Trek chess.
Yeah, exactly. So that it's certainly starting to emerge, and it's something that I've really only personally started seeing in the past like 6 months or so. But I'm sure there's people that have even predated that. But.
So I'm really excited about a couple of key techs in the field. One being light field technology. Lightro's camera is a huge game changer as far as visual effects is concerned. The amount of data in their pipeline is just astronomical, so it's not really feasible right now, but the whole concept of light field rendering and being able to do a single render and have volumetric data from that render changes a huge amount, where instead of having to render a sequence or create a real-time thing, you could render the sequence that can be viewed from multiple viewpoints, which changes rendering times. Maybe you don't even have to go real-time anymore. You can say, no, I don't need programmers. I could do this all in baked content. However, mixed with that, as well as you had mentioned Lightro, the light field, and the tracking technologies inside out. We're used to having the lighthouses on our Vives, looking this way, but eventually it's got to get into here where we can get our hands with tactile feedback and be able to interact in the space. And how to make it cheaper. Right now, we're talking about having to make everything in a computer, and the issue with that is, well, it takes time. It takes a big team of people. Well, what if, like Jesse's VR camera here, I could take this camera and record this space. However, the problem with this method is it can't translate, right? I can't move around. It's static. Well, with volumetric VR, the ability to actually capture in video volumetric data and actually able to translate around without having to have actually move that tripod around, now a group of a couple guys and a good camera can go out and create this, and it didn't require a team of anything, right? You have volumetric data. So now you could go back to, I'm not really making a film, but I could be back in stage play with a volumetric VR presence. So, you know, now that's a different application. How do we make a cool story that can wrap around that tech?
I think we're at time, right? Okay. We will actually hang around here for a minute if you guys want to hit us up after this, but just for the sake of the show schedule. Thank you so much for being part of VR Bust. Thank you to our presenters.